Hey, man.
What's up?
Have you ever heard of Göbekli Tepe?
Hold on. Say it again?
Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah.
It sounds like a person who doesn't know how to, like, is trying to be like, go back in time, but they're trying to, like, figure out how to say it.
They can't.
You know?
Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe. And
Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe. And they're like, no, that's
like,
not.
What are you trying to...
They're like, what do you...
It's like the first time they've ever spoke, but they're trying to say...
Yeah.
Yeah. They're trying to get their first words out. And they want to say
go
back in time.
They got go, right? They got part of back.
Yeah. Göbekli
Tepe. Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah.
How do you know about time travel, but you can't speak yet?
How do you understand the concept of moving through parallel universes, but you can't get the words go back in time to form? Things I learned last night. Hey, if you like this podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon, where you'll get access to episodes a week early, bonus content, and a Q&A where you can ask your questions about the topics we talk about or just about me and Tim. So please consider doing that. It helps us to financially support this podcast because it's a passion project of ours, and also just gives you access to be more involved. So thank you for doing that. You can do it at TILLN.com/join. Maybe it's like a movie where it's like a creature is learning how to speak. You know,
Oh yeah,
Go back
like an E.T.
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah,
an E.T. Tepe.
You know, and they're like, "What are you saying?"
Go back to Tepe. Gets frustrated.
They always got weird hands. They always have weird hands. What if aliens come to Earth and they're offended by how we've portrayed their hands? They're just like, we have normal hands.
We don't do this.
We don't. You know, and then like Göbekli Tepe is like a cuss word to them. You know, and they're like, you've been portraying our hands all weird, and they're like, we're sorry about it. And they're like, Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe. It does kind of sound like a curse, like a foreign curse.
Does it?
Yeah. Like,
when you say that, you do mean like a curse word, like a cuss word.
Yeah.
It sounded like you were like, it sounds like a
like someone's cursing you. It
like
does
a
too.
witch doctor, like Göbekli Tepe.
Did I tell you about the time I got cursed?
What? By the FBI where they followed you in that van?
No. It was on my honeymoon.
In Vegas?
Yeah, bro. I got cursed hard. So obviously, like, so you remember Vegas?
Someone crawled out of the tunnels, and they were like,
you remember how in Vegas, like, if people try to talk to you, you have to just not.
Please don't give the listeners an idea that we are familiar with Vegas. You're more familiar.
Yeah,
I spent 3 hours there and hated the whole time.
Yeah.
I just don't want people listening to be like, oh, Jaron and Tim are regulars out in Vegas. We love Vegas, man.
No, yeah.
There's a little Christian church on the corner of Vegas, and that's where we spend all our time.
Okay, so here's what happened. We'll give context. We went on a trip. We drove through Vegas on the way to the Grand Canyon from San Diego.
You and I, this is not your honeymoon. Yes.
Yes, and when we got to Vegas, we're like, well, let's just swing in, see the Strip, experience it, and then leave. You know, so we were there for a couple hours. But here's the thing about Vegas, if you don't know. If somebody approaches you, you have to ignore them. In most other cities, like you can at least acknowledge a person's presence.
You'd be like,
hey, what's up?
They'll follow you.
But yeah, in Vegas, if you give them,
make eye contact.
Yeah, if you make shoulder contact, if your shoulders like are facing the same direction, then they're gonna follow you for 4 blocks.
Yeah.
Well, Bree didn't know that. I told her when we got there. I told her I was like, don't engage with anybody. And so like our first morning out there, we're walking.
So Midwest.
And so this lady, this little old woman, she approaches.
You got cursed by an old lady in Vegas?
No, she was a witch. I swear.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, definitely a witch. But I mean, like, when you say I got cursed, I'm imagining like a short man who's just like, you know, doing one of these side games on the street.
Oh, yeah.
He just looks up and he goes, you and your children will suffer.
And you're like, oh, okay, whatever weird.
Like,
But
splashes
if it's
some
like
powder
an
in
old
my
lady,
face.
that's like spooky. Ever since Holes, I've been afraid of any woman over the age of 70.
Don't talk to her. Don't talk to her. No, yeah. So
Madam, what's her name in Holes?
Madam Zeroni.
That's right,
If
yeah.
you forget to take Madam Zeroni up the mountain. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's as much as we can say without credit.
Yeah, I always thought her name was Madam Zamboni. I'll tell you.
So this lady approaches us, and I just kept walking. Bree did not. So she stopped and started talking to this woman.
You just kept walking. You left your wife with the witch.
Well, here's the thing. We were walking next to each other, and this lady approaches us, and I did what you do, which is ignore the witch. Ignore the witch. And so I kept walking, but Bree stopped, and I turned around.
They
and
have
was like, "What are you
signs
doing?"
everywhere in Vegas that
It's
say
like,
ignore the witch. They tell you to do it with signs all over.
But so she didn't. So I turn around and come back, and Bree's like talking to this lady, but she's not like speaking any sort of language.
Yeah, she
that
says,
exists.
Göbekli Tepe.
She's literally just like, and she's like grabbing Bree's hand.
Well, Brink is that. She's charismatic.
You guys grew up AG.
She's grabbing Bree's hand, and she's got like all these bracelets up her arms. Like she's wearing like a muscle shirt or tank top, I guess, and just like all these bracelets all the way up her arms, and she starts like pulling them off and trying to put them on Bree's arms. And I was like,
yeah.
I grabbed Bree and I was like, let's go. And then she looks at me and she's like, go. And then just like did like a weird hand motion and walked away. And I was like, you just cursed us. I was like, you literally
Yeah.
cursed us.
So that's Bree?
Yeah, I was like,
Look, you've ruined our honeymoon.
I was like, great
We've
start.
been married for 3 days.
Great start to this marriage. We literally opened it with a curse.
Yeah. Our kids are going to be demons now. Thanks, Bree.
Yeah, so that's the time I got cursed.
Wow.
Anyways, Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah.
It's a curse. Familiar. A lot of Vegas witches practice this
Yes.
curse. It's the oldest standing monument built by. I was going to say this, but built presumably by humans.
Right. Well, aliens got weird hands. They couldn't have made
They
it.
could have. Their hands are too weird.
Right.
No, it's the oldest standing monument built by humankind that we know of. It's in Turkey, and
Okay.
Göbekli Tepe. It's such it's a recent discovery. I'm gonna try to figure out when we originally found it. Like within the last 50 or 60 years, like we just came back up, like excavated
I
it.
really do hope that, 2,000 years from now, archaeologists dig up like an old McDonald's sign, and they're like, "This is the oldest standing monument." It was erected to celebrate old McDonald, who had a farm. Maybe.
That would be interesting. Like all the golden arches, and it's like they don't understand it. They can't explain
Yeah.
it. They're just like, there's these golden
They
arches.
write and speak in a different language by then.
Yeah, they're like
so they're just hieroglyphics to them.
7,000 years ago. There's this culture of the golden arches that spanned the globe. We have found 16,000 of these.
We got so many golden arches.
Every continent, and we can't figure out what the purpose of them was.
Yeah.
And they're like, but they're astronomically aligned. So every morning they line up with the chicken constellation, whatever that one is.
The chicken constellation. Jeez.
No, but Göbekli Tepe was discovered in 63, but it was only like the tip of the iceberg, and they discovered it. They're like, oh, that's kind of neat, whatever, and they just kind of left it. But then in 94, some other guy was doing some research, an archaeologist by the name of Klaus Schmidt. You might know him from Santa Claus. It's
Yes.
Santa.
Yeah.
No, but he was doing some research, like in a library, just studying, and he came across this Göbekli Tepe, and he's like, I'm gonna look more into that. And so in '94, he flew out there, and he just kind of unraveled.
I love
the
that
whole
there's people
role.
who are like reading books and they're just like, you know what? I'm going to go look into that.
I'm gonna check this
Let me
out.
Southwest.com and just try to find a flight out to, what's the closest airport to Göbekli Tepe? Oh, okay, cool, okay. And then you just hop on a flight and you just like, are you allowed to just go out? Well, how do you show up to a monument, right? How do you show up to it? Because I'm assuming they've got it protected.
It's gotta be on somebody's property. I mean, at this point, like this is not like the
Yeah, but
pyramids.
how would I show up to like? I mean, because Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't man-made, and so you show up, and then how do you be like? I'm an archaeologist. I would love to dig around a little bit. Do they just let you do that?
I mean, I think in this case, it probably would have been a lot easier because,
Because it's in Turkey or what?
well, no.
They care.
I think the reason is because at this time,
Who do you let
it
know if
wasn't
you're an archaeologist?
a
Is what I'm
big-
saying. No,
don't worry, I'm a professional.
It's a serious question. Like, how do you email ahead of time and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna come
dig up
How
a
did you
hole
do that in the
in this.
60s or the 70s? How did you write a letter?
I don't have an answer to
And you
this.
just sign it like Jaron Myers, archaeologist. It's a serious question. And I'm not trying to be funny.
Hey, what
I'm
are the
really
odds?
trying to
What are the odds that you change your email signature to comedian and archaeologist?
I'll do it 100%. As soon as my phone is at one of the cameras, I will 100% do that. Easy.
Never explain it.
For sure. The only emails I send are unsubscribe emails, so it's
My mom,
rugs.com, unsubscribe. Jaron Myers, comedian and archaeologist.
my mom emails me and I just email back, unsubscribe.
Yeah, and then that person emails back, this is Craig, not your mom. You get the wrong email. Because apparently that's a thing that can happen.
Yeah, that happens a lot to people these days. Okay, so let's talk about Göbekli Tepe.
No, I was asking you to. That was a serious question, is how do you inform? Anyway, we can get into that later.
Yeah, so in 94, this guy comes back out and he's like, I'm going to dig a little deeper into this, literally.
Literally, that's what I'm saying. You can't just show up and just start like with a pickaxe.
Well, that's not true. I did that in middle school whenever my cousin was in town, my cousin Miles, well, my ex-cousin.
Is this relevant to the story?
That part isn't. But so yeah, me and my cousin and my neighbor, we went. There was these tunnels in my neighborhood. They were just storm drains, and so we were digging around these storm drains like a bunch of idiots. And we got to the end of one, and we found the manhole cover, but we were too scared to go far enough into the tunnel where the lights were gone, like the natural light that was coming in. So we could see the light for the manhole cover, but we couldn't get close enough to tell that it was a manhole cover. And we were like, where's that light coming from? And so we came out and we kind of drew a little crude map, and we were like, okay, the light must be coming from an opening over here. And so we went to the park, the neighborhood park, and got my dad's shovels and just started digging holes in the grass. Trying to get to this opening in the tunnel, which for some reason would be letting in light, but you couldn't see the opening from the surface.
Sure. And you think that digging holes in the park in Parker, Colorado is the same as...
Yeah. Because here's what I'm trying to tell you. Are you listening to me? Let me tell you.
Okay, I apologize. Go ahead.
This wasn't like Stonehenge where it's like people were coming to visit. This was a guy who dug it up and found like a rock with a carving on it and was like, oh, that's interesting, whatever, and left it. And so this is like probably most likely on someone's private property at this point. And the guy just shows up and just starts digging. So he probably just knocked on the door, like kind of like an American Pickers type of situation. Like, hey, we noticed you got a lot of junk in your yard. Care if we dig around for a couple hours? And that's what he did.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm sorry I wasted your time and the listeners' time with my nonsense. So he shows up, starts digging around.
Yeah, just starts literally digging around, and unearths that this is like
unearths. You just keep doing it.
he discovers that this is kind of incredible. And so he pops off a letter to the scientists back home, and he's like, hey guys, this is kind of incredible. So they send him a whole bunch of money, and he starts digging even more. We'll start from the beginning of the story. How old do you think this is? Let's just take a guess.
Göbekli Tepe?
Yeah.
Well, you did say it was the oldest. So I know it's at least older.
It's at least the oldest.
I would guess. Well, the Earth's only 6,000 years old, so there's people listening who aren't laughing. I would say 12,000 years old.
12,000?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty accurate. Just kidding.
How old is it?
It's pretty close though. 15,000 years old.
Hey, it was an uneducated guess. So
So to put this in perspective, the pyramids, 4,500 years old.
right.
So this is 3 times as old as the pyramids.
Were the Jewish people building the pyramids? Is that what they were doing in Exodus?
Theoretically, there's not a lot of archaeological evidence for that, but there is.
But there sure is that in the Ten Commandments movie.
There's actually a little bit
That's
of.
where I think that from.
There's actually a little bit of archaeological evidence, very little, that there was some sort of cover up of what was happening in that era.
Oh, we should talk about that.
Very little evidence, though. It's hard to make a strong claim on it. But for the most part, the evidence is just that there was a general conglomerate of slaves that helped build it. But
Interesting. Okay, go ahead.
anyways, so go back.
Did the Jewish people build this?
Yes.
Göbekli Tepe? It's in Turkey.
Yes. No, they didn't.
Okay.
The Jews weren't around yet. I don't think.
That's not what the Bible says, but okay.
It at the very earliest, they would have been Canaanites before
Fair.
they were the
Okay.
Israelites.
Okay.
But even still, this was long before the Canaanites were even knighting.
Did you say knighting? As if they're the Canaan Knights? I loved it, but I hated it. Okay, so
gosh.
go ahead. So it's 15,000 years old.
Yeah. So what's really significant about this is it predates anything like by a long time, any form of civilization. That
What do we?
know
How
of.
old do we think Stonehenge is?
Let me look that up real quick.
Like, what's the next youngest? You know?
The next youngest, probably Stonehenge, but let me double check that. Stonehenge would have been built in 1986. No, it was 3000 BC. Gosh.
Yeah. So this thing.
It's 5 times as old as Stonehenge. Just kidding.
No, it's not. So 3,000 years BC?
Yeah, 3000 BC.
Okay,
So,
which would be 5,000 years old. Just kidding. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was 3 times.
3 times, not 5 times.
Yeah.
But yeah, 3 times as old as Stonehenge.
Ow.
Here's what's crazy
So it's
about
been
it.
around way before Stonehenge has been hinging.
Yeah, they actually mentioned that for the people who built Stonehenge, Göbekli Tepe is more ancient to those people than Stonehenge is to us.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy?
Actually, that is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
They're
yeah.
like, this thing's ancient.
Yeah, they're like, this thing's really old.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like, anyways, here's what's crazy about this. So for us, our modern understanding of civilization comes from the ancient Sumers.
Okay.
And that was the Sumerian people were the first real civilization we know of. And that started in 4500 BC. And so this predates it.
10,000 years.
Yeah. And so, it's crazy because
Well, not really,
from what we understood, the natural progression of civilization, you probably heard of this, is that we were hunter-gatherers for a long time that kind of traveled in packs and just didn't have like one stable spot. Then eventually they settled down in one little spot and had that be their little section of the world, and then they would hunter-gather around that. And then they started agriculture, founded agriculture, and then started building cities after
Have you
that.
heard of spiral dynamics?
No.
We should talk about that later.
Okay.
Spiral dynamics.
Okay.
Anyway, it has to do with that. But go ahead.
Yeah, so then they started building their cities, and then eventually they would build monuments after they were able to kind of get over the survival problem. Like for the longest time, humanity was just like, we just want to make sure we don't die.
Once that need is gone, then you move on to other needs,
To other
like
things.
societal needs and stuff.
Yeah. What is really interesting about Göbekli Tepe is there is no evidence that the society that built this knew anything about agriculture. They skipped that whole step and were, for all we can tell, a hunter-gatherer society that built a massive, massive monument that honestly is kind of mind-numbing that they were able to build with the tools that we know of at the time. Because at the time, their tools, any tools we've discovered from that time period are like flint rock tools. So that's like just sharpened stones that they're building stuff out of.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea of the scope of this project is, so when it was originally found, it was this big mound because dirt had just kind of swallowed it back up, and it just disappeared. So Göbekli Tepe is Turkish.
How big are we talking?
Let me look real quick. About 1,000 feet in diameter. This hill, yeah. So, okay. And in Turkish, Göbekli Tepe means potbelly hill because it looks like a beer belly, and so that's how it got its name, and that's why it's such a weird. And it's not something poetic like Stonehenge or the pyramids of Giza. It's beer belly.
Yeah,
and so
beautiful. Honestly,
it's artistic. And so when you dig into this, what's really interesting about it is a similar shape to like a Stonehenge. It is standing stones in the shape of a circle, and there's like inner stones and outer stones, and then there's actually outside circles too. So there's the main circle, and then there's other circles outside with big pillars. And then these pillars have like big stone bases. And these pillars are up to 6 meters tall. So 20 feet tall pillars, weighing up to 10 tons at the heaviest. And there's over 200 pillars and 20 circles on the site of these massive monuments that were built from a society that, as far as we know, I mean, the wheel didn't exist. They didn't have...
I mean, they were confused about the pyramids and also Stonehenge.
Yeah, so the fact that there was a society that could do the same thing this far before...
Because isn't there a theory that they were more technologically advanced than we were, but then it all crumbled?
Yes. Hey, man, nice shirt you're wearing.
Thanks. TILLN.com/merch. Where, oh my gosh!
Here's what's interesting. To use a phrase I use a lot. Here's what's interesting.
As opposed to every other part of the episode. Here's what's interesting.
So they built this big structure with all the pillars, and the pillars sidebar were immaculately decorated with carvings, and even like statues that came off the carvings that were incredibly well done, like strangely well done for the time period, obviously.
Like of what?
Mostly animals, some kind of abstract art, but mostly animals, and mostly the sort of animals that we would assume would be the ones that they would fear. So things like lions, boars,
saber-toothed tigers.
Actually, yeah, saber-toothed tigers, scorpions, things that they probably would view as like ferocious beasts.
I view scorpions as ferocious beasts.
I mean, those things sting you, and that sucks.
Those things sting. I'll tell you that. That's pretty ferocious.
But yeah, it was covered in all this design, and then these pillars are these big T-shaped pillars. It's not just a straight pillar like Stonehenge. They come up and then they come out in like a T shape, and some people theorize that they're supposed to resemble humans because some of them have like carvings in it that make like there's like, oh, that's an arm, it's a hand, and those parts have since broken off the extensions. So but that's not clear. But anyway, so they're covered in art and sculptures and carvings and things like that. But what's crazy is they built this massive structure, right? And a few decades later, they buried it and they built it again. So this is the original DIA. A few decades later, they buried it and built it again. And this happened a couple times. And a
couple times? You mean like there's
multiple layers where they would build it and use it for what looks like a few decades, and then basically like a generation. They would use it and then they'd bury it and build it again, and then bury it and build it again. And this cycle just repeated a few times until eventually it looks like they just abandoned it. And we're just like, we're tired of burying this thing and rebuilding it. And so they moved away. And then there's no evidence of anyone being there until the 60s when they found it.
From to bury it?
Everything about this is interesting because even the stones aren't from or anywhere near where this is. Like they brought these stones, just like Stonehenge, they brought these stones from miles away. And how they did that, these are 10-ton stones. I mean, it's phenomenal. Just like any of those.
That was your nickname in high school when you were fat too.
10-ton stone. Gosh, I hate that. So they had but what's crazy about it is every layer you would assume through time they would learn new techniques and it would get better, but every layer gets worse. It gets progressively, the architecture gets worse, the circles become less round, they start to become more ovals, and then eventually like rectangles.
Are you getting like lazy or what?
I don't know, but they progressively get worse. The stones aren't carved as well, and they're not laid out as well, so they're falling over like on upper layers. It literally is like they, when they originally built it, they had this figured out, and then as time went on, they got dumber or something.
So we have dug all the way to the bottom.
Correct.
That we think's the bottom.
Well, it does. We've dug to this point where it's like, okay, this is the plateau that lines up with the rest of the area. So the hill, this big old hill, was where they just buried it, and so this is an artificial hill, like a man-made hill from these ancient people.
Where'd they get the dirt? Where'd they move that from?
We don't know. We don't know where this dirt came from.
There's no because giant crater.
There's not a hole nearby. We don't know where this dirt came from. But yeah, they would bury it, build up on top of it. And it's crazy to me because there's no, like, you don't know, like, why did they get worse? Why did they get worse over time? Why did they do it to begin with? Why did they keep rebuilding it? And why did it get worse over time?
Yeah, I'm more interested in the rebuilding and that than, I mean, like, obviously it's interesting that they made a monument, but to do it again and again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just doing it because that's what my dad did.
Yeah, my dad did this, and his dad did this,
Yeah.
and his dad did this. So I'm going to bury this thing, and I'm going to build it again. But yeah, it's kind of like I noticed whenever we bought our house and we were renovating it.
There's a house underneath it. And you were like, I guess
so
my
we
kids are going to have to build on top of this thing.
So we dug a little deeper. There was a house underneath that. And then we went into the basement, which was finished, and we cut a hole, and there was a map.
There's a map to the neighbor's house. That's a deep
which have
cut.
4 houses underneath that.
That's a deep cut. All right.
But yeah, so...
What did you notice at your house when you bought a house?
Oh, I noticed that my dad and my wife's dad, so my father-in-law, or you could say my dad's, are way better at that stuff than I am. But I grew up, my dad taught me a lot. Like, I was always doing project stuff, but he's just better than me at that. It's just a similar concept. Like, these dads raised their kids.
Was better.
And then over time, when the kids got more into video games, they were worse at doing things with their hands. So... And the dad's like, why don't you go play outside and build a monument?
Build a monument or something. Why don't you do something with your life?
Yeah, but instead he's not. So,
Trisha, you could have been married to a man who would build a monument, and instead you've got this bum. All right?
His literal name is Bum.
His literal name is Bum. That's where we get the word bum.
It's named after that guy. He's the original Bum.
Yeah. You could have had Builder. And that's where we get the word builder. Builder and Bum.
Builder and Bum.
Trisha was a name that was around for a while,
yeah,
though.
That's gone way back.
Yeah, way further back. That's actually the oldest name that we know.
Yeah. She invented Triscuits.
You know, Trisha and her Triscuits.
So they just kept rebuilding.
Hold on. So Triscuit is try-skit, right?
Yeah.
And a biscuit is by-skit. Try involves 3.
Yes.
All right. Biscuit is 2 skits.
Yeah.
What is a singular skit?
A skit.
Yeah, but what?
It's just a skit.
What is that, a skit?
It's a scat.
You guys got any skits?
Anybody got any skits right here?
That's one of the things I hate. I ran into this, like, when I went out to dinner with my family 2 years ago or whatever, back before COVID or whatever. We were in my hometown, and a guy that used to be our neighbor saw us and came over, because that's how Mount Vernon works. You know,
Yeah. You see people
just talking, and he's like, "Do you still do your skits?" And it's just like, oh,
I don't do skits.
I do biscuits.
Mom, tell this man they're Triscuits.
I'm just,
That's
Triscuits, biscuits, scones.
1 skits?
Scones? Scone. 2 scones, biscuit.
3 scones.
Triscuit. Quad skit.
Kinson skit.
We can move on.
So a lot has been done to figure out why these were built and why these got progressively worse. First of all, there's literally no evidence of any sort of dwelling anywhere around these monuments.
Oh, so they didn't live and work there.
No. So there's no.
They traveled to do this.
Yeah. There's no evidence. There's no water source for miles. There's no evidence of any sort of fire source where they would cook or heat or anything like that. No storage for food. No dwelling places. Like, it's literally clear that nobody lived here. It was just a place where they would build this monument and do whatever they did this for. One thing we do know is we found tons of bones in and around Göbekli Tepe.
So they probably hunted while they were out there.
Yeah, so there's mostly gazelles and oryx bones, which oryx are like, have you heard of oryx?
Yeah, they're in RuneScape. You kill those?
Actually, yeah, that is what they are.
Yeah, they're big and green, and they're like,
Those are oryx.
oh, sorry.
I thought the oryx might be.
No, I've heard of oryx.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's isn't that a vacuum? So they were killing the gazelles and then just
Vacuum them up. Vacuum them up.
Vacuum
Vacuum them up.
Vacuum.
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 Vacuum. I'm just vacuum them up to all these gazelles and go back to Tepe.
Yeah, honestly,
everyone's like, what's that alien saying?
Dude, you sound, and this is not a joke, you sound like, you know, the swamp people, like from Louisiana, right? The swamp, like, and they'll do like a show where they're like gator people or whatever, and like they're speaking English, but they gotta have subtitles because they're just like, you know, don't really go back on that play and back them up.
Backing them up out of the gazelles.
Yeah, honestly, you sound like who's the coach of the LSU Tigers or whatever, right? What's his name?
I don't
know, backing them up.
I'm gonna back them up and go back to Tepe. Bro, speaking of, I found this out yesterday. Did you know that so Terry Bradshaw, you know, like the quarterback in the NFL who is now giving away all his money every weekend. Did you know that in college he played second string quarterback behind
Patrick Mahomes,
Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty? Duck Dynasty was the number one guy. And Terry Bradshaw has said in interviews, he's like, honestly, I wouldn't have the career I had if Phil didn't quit. So Phil quit because football interfered with his hunting. He's like, I don't have enough time to hunt. And so he quit. He literally got an offer from the Washington football team.
So he got an offer from Washington.
He got an offer from Washington to come play for them. And it was like one of those offers where it's like he hadn't graduated yet. They were like, hey, come up to the league before you graduate. We'll bring you on, start you first year. He said,
like, no, I'm going to finish this degree so I can go hunt.
No, yeah, he literally said, nah, I want to hunt. And turned down a career in the NFL to hunt. And because of that, like that year, he's like, yeah, I'm out. And he like quit football. So Terry Bradshaw by default became the starting quarterback. Obviously went on to have a great career. Mm-hmm. And Terry's like, that's the only reason I got. But Terry in that interview was like, yeah, dude, it was crazy because like he would come to practice in jeans and a t-shirt covered in animal guts, like literally covered in guts. Yeah. And he'd just come on the field and just throw these bomb passes, like just like a freaking animal, and then walk back off. And he would hide ducks in his locker at the school, dead ducks, because he would take more than he was drawn for. Like he would kill more than he was drawn for, and the game wardens were after him. And so he would hide his ducks in the locker room. He's like, our locker room smells so bad. He's like, he got in big trouble for that, but it worked out for him. He obviously ended up, hunting was a better choice for him.
Dynasty.
Yeah, so Göbekli Tepe, here's some theories about where it came from and why it was built.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is before society was built. So it was a monument of some kind. So the pervading concept, an idea, is that it was some sort of religious temple,
Right,
to
obviously.
a long dead religion that we don't know about anymore. And so this is their big main cathedral, and this was where they would do whatever their worship was. The theories have been,
I love the idea that, again, going back to like with the McDonald's arches thing or whatever.
Yeah.
I like the idea that people are going to find our airports because I'm assuming that travel will evolve.
probably look quite different.
Right,
yeah.
we'll be teleporting.
Yeah.
And or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the same way that you would find, like, I don't know, anyway, like buses will be illegal. Let's just go bus
illegal.
stations.
Everyone's like,
I think that motor travel will become illegal. I
down
really
with
do.
the bus.
I really do.
I hate buses.
It's not that they're like, we don't like the bus.
Forget your bus. Bus on out.
Bus on out. It's us or the bus, like I was trying to get there. Anyway, anyway, like architects find our airports.
Yeah. Archaeologists.
That's
Not
yes,
architects. Architects
yeah.
do something different.
Yeah, architects are they're the opposite. Archaeologists dig. They go up. Archaeologists go down and architects go up, That's the main difference.
If an architect found Göbekli Tepe, he'd be like, hey, I could do another layer.
I could do I'll build another one. And they're like, this is literally not what we need you for.
Like, we didn't ask you to do
I'll
this.
do it worse than that one, I promise. But I like that they might find something, right? And assume that it has a religious,
Yeah, like daylight donuts and
like, why would they build this structure if it wasn't for a place to come worship?
Yeah, the only possibility is it was
The only possibility. I do like that. That's when we're approaching history. That's often what.
It's true. But to be fair, most of the things that we put a lot of effort into until recent history was religious significant.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what people
now,
and that we can talk more about that later
look
too.
What I can do,
right? I think that that has to do with. I mentioned spiral dynamics earlier, but I'll tell you. But you want to go to lunch after this?
No.
Great. I can tell you about it later.
I already have a lunch meeting.
Do you actually?
I actually do today. Yeah.
With who?
This is none of your business, man. That's a personal question.
It's fair. It's fair.
Religious.
The key to our friendship is healthy boundaries.
And you see, there's the boundary. I
have lunch too.
Oh yeah,
I have a lunch with somebody else. It's none of your business, but it's somebody important.
What about dinner?
I'm busy. If you enjoy Things I Learned Last Night, please consider joining us on Patreon, where you'll get access to episodes a week early, some behind-the-scenes content, and a Q&A with us if you want to answer your questions about episodes, about me and Tim's life, whatever it may be. All that and more on Patreon. And you get to help us pull this off, because this is something that is a passion for us, and we want to get better at it and get better equipment, and you can help us do that. So please head over to TILLN.com/join and...
Sorry, I'm going to TILLN.com/join.
Join.
Hold on.
Join.
J-O. Capital L-N.
That's not.
Lowercase l.
Back to the episode.
So obviously there's all these like animal sculptures and stuff all over it. So the people are like, well, maybe they worship these animals. Or maybe those animals were there as like their protector of their temple. Like they're like, oh, they're animals that are scary, so they're going to protect the temple. Just like jack-o'-lanterns. Yeah. So it's protecting them from the
People had some weird ideas, man.
Yeah, and so or there's some theories that a lot of these animals used are animals that do have a constellation. So maybe that is they're like, because they see in the sky, they're like, oh, look at that tiger. See those stars? If you just kind of connect them, it's like it's a tiger. And they're like, well, that's probably God. And so then they worship it. And so it's just a theory. And then obviously there's evidence of some kind of feasting occasionally happening because of all the bones that you see. So religious significance is likely, and it's the prevailing theory that's what it was used for.
I'm glad you said prevailing this time. You said pervading earlier, but I just let it happen.
It was pervasive. So that's that's a theory, but you know,
I don't like
when
it.
are we ever excited about the theory that makes the most sense?
Give me the one that doesn't make any sense at all.
We love the ones that make no sense.
Yeah.
So let's go on to first theory that is not accepted by any real science.
So the main theory is obviously religious significance.
The accepted theory by archaeologists and architects alike.
And architects. And comedians. Jaron Myers, comedian, architect, and archaeologist.
And anarchist.
And anarchist.
You know, my architecture and my archaeology gave me my career, but I hate archy.
I'm an anarchitect. I'll tell you that. We can just keep going.
So
Let's just really try to plow through this.
So in 9300 BC, there is a theory that a comet struck the Earth. This theory has not been proven, but there's some things about just the way the environment changed that lead towards the evidence of some sort of cataclysmic event.
Right.
In 9300
Is that when
BC.
the dinosaurs died?
I don't think so. I think it's way before that. And in fact, I know it's way before that.
No, I think that 9300 BC is when the dinosaurs died.
Okay.
Because humans were riding dinosaurs.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to Ken Ham.
So 9300, it was Noah's Ark, the flood. And that was the cataclysmic, started by a comet. The comet came and it brought a bunch of water. It was really just a space faucet that just poured a bunch of water into the Earth.
I hate that.
What is that? It looks like a big old space
Look at that
faucet.
space hose up there.
Someone turn off the space spigot.
Someone turn off the space shower. That's why they call it a meteor shower.
Because it was, you know.
Yeah, these meteor showers have been pretty dry.
And so people connected this to Göbekli Tepe. Obviously, the construction of it is a little predating what this event would be. So it's a little curious. But when it was finished,
whenever they're saying the layers, right? Do they know how far apart the layers were? Like, was this a yearly thing? Was this you said decades?
a couple decades, a few decades, and it varied, but a few decades each time. So it
that
really was like
whole
about a
mound
generation.
Was there cannibalistic
Cannibal.
Golly. Cataclysmic.
Cataclysm. Catacombs.
Man, I give up. My
Catamaran.
brain is not doing it.
Yeah, so no, it
You
was
say the word.
Cataclysmic.
Cataclysm.
Cataclysm?
I know the word. My brain
Göbekli
cannot
Tepe.
do it.
Göbekli Tepe, Cataclysm.
Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
Man. Disprint. Anyway, I am disprint to say this word right now. My goodness.
So no, it
So
wasn't there.
they're saying it predates.
It was the construction predates the Cataclysm, but one of the layers would have been finished when that Cataclysm happened. And
When this big event.
yeah, and when you look at the art, what people are saying is that a lot of the animals do line up with the constellations that would have been visible in that era when this comet would have struck. And if you look at some of the other drawings, they look like headless people are carved into these statues. And so the theory is that they're depicting this big cataclysmic event, and this is like a massive graveyard. And so they didn't have the bones of the people, so they put bones of animals in their place to honor them and remember all these lost people that just disappeared in this massive explosion from the comet. So maybe there's no proof that any of this ever happened.
No proof that a massive world-altering event happened.
Well, there's some signs of maybe some sort of event happening. No proof of what it was or if it happened at all. But there's signs of something maybe happening. You know, it's kind of like when I don't have a good analogy for this. I thought when I said it's kind of like I thought something would come to me, but it just didn't happen. So, you know, whatever. Yeah. So you never know. You never know. Could have happened. Could have not happened. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why scientists don't believe it. But then there is the more interesting idea that that kind of hinges on this concept of how it got worse over time. That is really interesting to me because, one, most people disagree with it. Two, it's just more interesting.
It's just a more fun idea.
It's just a funner thing.
I hate that you said funner. Go ahead.
So the idea is that there was some...
Cataclysmic.
I mean, that's close. Cataclysmic. You had another...
I had a little... Yeah. Cataclysmic.
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
Man.
Proud of you.
My brain was... felt like a sneeze, where my brain was like, say the word. Say it. Cataclysmic.
Yeah,
Jeez, man. And you probably were saying it wrong anyway, so it doesn't matter. So that's happened to you a lot this year. We talked about that on this. Have we talked about it on the podcast before? Yeah, about how I just cannot form words.
Can't get words out. Can't get words out. Yeah, it happens. I think it's... Anyways.
I feel like a weight in my head whenever I'm wearing, when I'm in the store with the mask on, and I'm talking to the person at the register, my shoulders and my body, I really do feel like a social weight of I want to see your whole face.
Really?
Does that happen to you at all?
I think that's a concussion.
Yeah, my eyes are all like... Speaking of, man, we're recording this right now, and Mahomes just got injured on Sunday.
Yeah.
So we don't know yet what the results of that are.
You see, they said it was a pinched nerve. He pinched a nerve.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
I did not see that.
So it's not a concussion. So he probably can still play.
Oh, dude, they're so full of it. He had a concussion, and they're like, oh, it's a pinched nerve. He can play Sunday. Oh, man. Dude, that Andy Reid's just like, okay, Patty, can you do 2 more games? And then you could rest all year.
And he's like, what sport do I play?
Like, how many games is 2? And they're like,
define game.
No, he's like, how many games is 2? His voice. I love him so much. I really hope he's okay.
Yeah, so anyway. That's what.
Okay, so you're saying that it's a pinched nerve. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's this last theory that Patrick Mahomes went back in time, built it?
Yeah, there actually is a theory. I didn't hit that, but there's a theory that somebody time traveled, and there's a theory that was built by aliens. Also,
obviously,
obviously,
anytime there's anything unexplained, people go, aliens.
Aliens probably did that. So
there was a couple days back in the fall where you were like freaking out that the government said they're aliens.
Yeah, because the government said it. The government released all this footage, and then that one dude who was the leading space security dude for Iran or something. Not Iran, Israel was like, yeah, we have a relationship with an alien race, and he just flat out said it, and nobody batted an eye. Everyone was like, oh, what a crazy person.
Yeah, they gave us high 3s all the time.
It's because their other fingers.
You got it.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So dumb.
Even the people listening to the audio got that. They got that joke.
So this theory is that when you look at it and you look through the layers of the construction, it's getting worse and worse and worse as time goes on.
Yeah.
So this theory is that this is a construction of some sort of previously used structure, a rebuild after some sort of apocalyptic event that killed most of this society that was a more advanced society than what we previously knew existed. So there was something that happened, and there's a lot of theories of what this could have been. It could have been a big disease, could have been a cataclysm like a comet, it could have been a war, whatever it was, destroyed their society almost completely. There was the remnant, the people who survived it, and they went to rebuild. They built this structure using all the techniques they knew, maybe some of the tools that they had left over.
Yeah.
And that's why they were able to move these stones and build it in the shape and do everything that they could that seemed so advanced compared to what we knew, and why maybe they didn't need agriculture or whatever we assumed that they used before to build societies.
Yeah.
And then over time, as that knowledge was lost, and as every generation who didn't come from that society and wasn't a first-hand person who experienced it, lost the ability.
They slowly deteriorated.
Mm-hmm. But why they rebuilt is still curious, because it's like, well, why would you go build on top of that if you had the first-hand iteration of it that was done better.
Sure.
But there is when you look at the stones, it's clear that because of the way some of the stones are laid out, there was wooden cross beams connecting the stones together. So these were more of the like pillars that were supporting it. It wasn't like meant to be a Stonehenge standing circle. There was wooden pillars that were connecting it all and roofs. It was an enclosed structure with walls and everything like that because the stones, some of the main pillars in the middle could not support themselves freestanding. They needed something else supporting it.
So when they built the layers on top of it and they buried it, right?
Yeah.
So now did we just uncover like huge columns?
Yeah, so we just dug deep. We just dug.
Are there pictures of this?
Yeah, there's lots of pictures. And so there's some where it's like a column straight down, and then there's some where it's like we dug and then we moved it.
I'm saying like if they put a column on top of that other column, they buried it, put it exactly where it was.
Yeah, so we would.
And eventually we dig down and we've got like 5 columns on top of each other, right?
Well, no, anything that was right on top, we moved. So there's.
We just moved it. We were like, haha.
Yeah, kind of like. Did you know?
Yeah, that's why the world's falling apart.
This is the core that runs the planet.
Maybe it's kind of like a little lock, you know? Like it's got to line up, and then we came through and we're like, this one goes over here, this one goes over here, this one, and now it's like out of sync, right? You can't see what I'm doing with my hands, but it's kind of like the church and the steeple kind of thing, you know, where you put here's the steeple, open it up, and there's all the people.
You know that thing.
And right now they're all scattered, but we would even be lined up.
See, so yeah, I think they're down. In this one, like you can kind of tell in this picture, it's kind of, I don't know. If you look around, you can see that.
Wow, they put that whole like roof and stuff over it.
No, that they found that was part of it.
Okay.
And so there's areas where it goes down deeper. There's areas where it's on the top, and then there's areas where they just moved the whole thing. Because like they did that in Egypt. Whenever in Egypt there was some sort of tomb, I can't remember who it was for, but in the like 60s they were building. A man-made lake, like Lake of the Ozarks, that would have buried this, or I guess submerged this tomb. And the archaeologists were like, you can't do that. That's stupid. And then the government was like, we're going to do it. And then they were like, okay, well, let us at least move it first. They moved this temple like miles away so it wouldn't be underwater. So they just like cut little pieces of it and moved it and like glued it back together. And you can't even tell now. It's kind of impressive. But same concept. They just took pieces of the monument and moved it.
So they built like this bridge over it that you're able to walk and see this.
Yeah.
We really should do a trip where we just go to all the spots we've talked about.
That'd be interesting. But yeah, the idea is that there was a society before this.
This has been moved.
Parts of it have been moved. Okay. The upper layers have been moved. Some of the middle layers are still there.
The lower layer is where it was.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. The lower layer has not been moved. So, but it is. It could be, for all we know, third McDonald's from an ancient society. They rebuilt McDonald's. They're like, man, what's the one thing we need to rebuild after this apocalypse? And they're like,
but they didn't know how to run the production and everything. They were like, all right, well, I know they serve gazelle burgers, so let's kill a bunch of those, and then. I'm thinking if it is the religious thing, it would be a generational. If there's a few decades between, then maybe this is like this generation has to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know, almost like a pilgrimage.
Yep. So
a rite of passage.
Maybe, but even still, no matter what it is, it's very crazy because it way predates anything else that we know of that has any sort of monument building. Monument building didn't happen for literally 10,000 years after this. Like it's insane.
There's no other monuments.
No, not
that we know of.
Not that we know of. The next youngest monument was built in 3000. So literally 10,000 years.
Is Stonehenge the next monument? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. So
of that size, though, I mean, like, but people were doing,
that we know of,
and stuff.
That we know of. Maybe somebody built something, but we don't have archaeological evidence of anything until Stonehenge. So it is.
But that's monument.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like statues. Like,
so the next civilized society we know of is Sumer.
Sumerians.
Yeah, and so they were 4,500. So still
this
like 9,000 years.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's mind-numbingly
we don't know
predates.
What people did this.
Yeah. And the world would have looked alien. Like woolly mammoths were still there, saber-tooth tigers were still there, half of the planet was still frozen. The top half of the planet was still frozen from the Ice Age. Like it was
You're revealing a lot of your theology here.
It was a totally different Earth at this point.
Right, for sure.
The dragons were still out.
The dragons were busy melting the ice caps up there with their fire breathing stuff.
This ancient society, they harnessed the power of the dragons to melt the ice. You know, I mean, they did a lot.
The idea that all the dragons we hear about in stories are dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Fire breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the Bible. They breathed fire.
They breathed fire. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to make fun of you for not being able to say words today. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, what were you trying to say?
Shut up.
Cosmetology?
Yeah, cosmetology. Jaron Myers, comedian, architect, archaeologist, anarchist, and cosmetologist.
I went to school for this.
Hey, if you've got your degree in cosmetology or hair cutting or whatever you're doing, we respect you. We do respect you.
We do.
I respect all professions.
That is a theory.
Not all of them.
That's a Göbekli Tepe theory. It's a barbershop.
Shut up. All right. Is there anything more on it?
Nah, I got nothing.
Oh, okay, cool. I think what it is an orchestra house. You know? Yeah. Where they would host a regular fiddle off.
Hey, thanks for watching Things I Learned Last Night. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and watch some of our other videos. They're showing up on the screen somewhere around here right now. We'll see you later.